Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my October reading wrap up. I had such a good reading month in October. I read so many good books. I dived into, I should turn this around so you can't see it there. I dived into a series that I've been wanting to read for literally so long. We're just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna give you all of my thoughts, my opinions. I read 6 books this month. There's some pretty hefty books in there though, I will say. So let's go ahead and dive right into them. So if you don't already know, this month I started the Magnolia Park series and I am so obsessed with the series. Like I knew I would be because so many people have talked about it. So many of my favorite like booktubers and book talkers are obsessed with it, and like I knew I was gonna love it, but I did not think I was gonna love this series as much as I do. I am so obsessed with it. I never want to stop reading about these characters. I swear I could read 20 books about these characters. Like, oh my god. So let's start with the first book. So this is about Magnolia and BJ, and basically the best way to describe this is like Gossip Girl but in high society London. Magnolia and BJ dated when they were younger, and then something happened and they broke up, and now there's been like a few years since they broke up and they're still like in the same friend group. They still see each other all the time, but they're always like dating other people and being super toxic towards each other and all this stuff. And basically the whole book is just this back and forth between them of like, you know that they should be together and you know that they still love each other, but like they're just so toxic and they're purposefully hurting each other, hooking up with other people to like make the other person jealous. And it's just like, even though it is so toxic, and like if this were happening to like any of my friends in real life, I'd be like, what are you doing? But in a book, I don't know why, I just am like eating it up. Like it is literally so good. I will say it did take me a little bit to get into this because there's so many characters introduced. Like it's a huge found family. All the characters like went to boarding school together, so they've become really close and everything. And there's like siblings and stuff, so there's a lot of characters that get introduced, and it took me a while, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. I will say I only gave the first one 4 stars. Honestly, this has probably been my least favorite of the series. Still so good, but like once you get into the other books and you understand the characters and you like know the relationships between them, I feel like it makes it so much better. Next up, I read Daisy Hates. So this is also part of the Magnolia Park series. So it goes Magnolia Parks, then Daisy Hates, then Magnolia Parks 2, then Daisy Hates 2, and then Magnolia Parks 3 is coming out in February, I believe. So it kind of goes back and forth, but you still get like crossover between all the characters, but this one focuses more on Daisy and Christian. So Christian is a friend of like Magnolia and BJ in that whole group, and then he is dating Daisy, and Daisy is kind of adjacent to that group. Her older brother is a gang lord of London, and while she isn't necessarily friends with the whole group of like Magnolia and BJ, she is kind of adjacent to them, like I said. And basically this is about her and Christian's story. Both of them are still in love with their exes basically, but they're trying to like get over them, and they're basically using each other. So again, super toxic, but also just so good. And then you also get Julian's point of view in this book, which is Daisy's brother, and there's this whole thing going on, and there's little bits that you get of him, and it's kind of like a little bit of a mystery of like what's going on, because he's basically working on this like project, and you're kind of like trying to figure out what happens. And then the end of this book, crazy. Like literally my jaw dropped. I could not believe what I read. I was like, how did that just happen? That very ending broke my heart. I literally was like on the verge of tears. I couldn't like even process. I did like this one a little bit more than the first book. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It still wasn't quite a 5-star, but it was like really good. And you still get pieces of like Magnolia and BJ's story, which I loved. So I don't know what to say about this series other than I'm literally obsessed with it. Then I took a little bit of a break from Magnolia Parks, and if you watched my reading thrillers for a week video, then you know the next 3 books that I read. But I decided to read thrillers for a week because it was October, Halloween is coming up, spooky season, all that kind of stuff. So the first one I read is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. I really wanted to like this book. I heard really good things about it, but it just, I don't know, it wasn't like my absolute favorite. It was still good and I recommend it, but I don't know, it is very creepy. It's very dark. Definitely read trigger warnings on this. Like it is very intense. I did not know that going in. So definitely be warned on that. This is about Camille, and she lives in Chicago, but she's from a small town in Missouri, I believe. She's a reporter, and her boss asked her to go down to her small town in Missouri because there have been 2 murders of little girls and they think that they're connected, so they're trying to like figure out what's going on. She goes back to her hometown and then just shit hits the fan. Like crazy stuff happens. She's like working to try and figure out what happened and like who could be the murderer of these little girls. Also doesn't have a good relationship with her family. She has a younger half sister, and there's just like all this weird stuff that happens with like her mom and her sister. You kind of start to piece it together a little bit, but then the ending, I was still in shock. Like I kind of guessed some of the ending, but also didn't. It's a very short book. Like it's a very quick read, I will say, but I don't know what it was, but I think I just was expecting like more of a mystery, and there was a lot more of just like creepy stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was still good. I gave it 3 stars and I would still recommend it if this is something you're interested in, but I wouldn't say it's like my absolute favorite of all time. Then I read another book by Gillian Flynn. I read Gone Girl, which I know I'm so behind on. This book is so insanely popular. The movie came out like almost 10 years ago, I think, and I actually did watch the movie, but it was a really, really long time ago and I didn't remember like anything that happened, but I knew I wanted to read this book because, again, I've heard really good things about it. It's such a like well-known, highly acclaimed book, so I was like, I want to read it. I did enjoy it, but the ending, I talked about it in the reading vlog where I read this book, but with most of the thrillers I've read, there's a big reveal right at the end. You find out everything gets tied together and you're like, holy shit. This one is kind of like, you find out what's going on as you go, and then at the end, it's sort of just like a wrap up and a resolution, and it just wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting like a big reveal, a big shocking, like something happening on the last page where you're like, oh my god, but it wasn't like that. This is about Nick and Amy, and on their 5th wedding anniversary, Amy goes missing, and now Nick is like the #1 suspect because he's the husband, of course. You get both of their point of views and basically trying to figure out if Nick actually did it, what happened to Amy. You get these journal entries leading up to her disappearance, and so you're trying to kind of piece it together, and then there's like a part 2 and you figure out what happened and you're like, okay, like it's definitely very creepy and like really well thought out. Like she did an incredible job with creating this storyline, but it was just the ending that I wasn't like as obsessed with. It wasn't what I was expecting. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Still really, really good. I do want to rewatch the movie now that I like actually remember what happened, but I would recommend it, but again, wasn't like an absolute favorite of mine. Next, I read None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is the first book I've read by her, and I now really want to read more. Like I really, really enjoyed this. The writing style was super fast paced. I got through this book so quickly. It was just like a fun read, like a fun thriller mystery. So this is about Alex and Josie. They meet at a restaurant and they find out that they have the exact same birthday, born on the same year, and in the same hospital. And so Josie finds out that Alex is a podcast host and is like, what do you think about doing like a podcast on like my life story, and we can talk about like being birthday twins? And it's kind of like confusing to explain, but Alex agrees to it. And so Josie starts coming around her house, telling her things about her life, and like you just find out this crazy stuff about like her husband and her children, and you're like, it's all like very confusing. And then things start to get revealed, and then the lies start to come out, and you're just like so confused as to what is going on. Honestly, at no point in this book did I know where it was gonna go next. I was like in shock every time something happened. The way it's written is really interesting too, because it's written in past tense almost. So you get these clips of like a few years in the future where there's a Netflix series being made about what happened. So I don't know how to explain it, but like you get these little clips of like interviews with like Josie's family and people she knows, and like things start to get pieced together slowly. I loved the writing style of this so much. The way you get flashbacks and then you get stuff in the future, and it's just like, I loved the writing style so much. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I want to read more from her. Highly, highly recommend this book. I gave this one 4.25 stars. I don't know why I didn't give it 4.5. I just feel like it was like not quite there, but it was still really, really good, and I highly, highly recommend. Okay, and then the last book I read this month, I'm kind of cheating because I technically finished it in November, but I started it in October and I finished it within the first couple days of November, so I'm just counting it as part of my October reads. But Magnolia Parks 2, one of the easiest 5 stars I've ever given a book. I did not want this book to end. I am so obsessed with this book. This is just a continuation of Magnolia and BJ's story, but now that like at this point you know and you're so in love with all the characters from both Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haight, you get all this crossover. again, there's more toxicity, there's more lies, there's all this stuff, but it is just so good in the ending. I had the way that my emotions flipped so quickly from being so happy and so excited to literally my heart being shattered. Like, I'm doing a Magnolia Parks reading vlog, so you'll see my reaction, but I'm obsessed with this book. Like, I literally want to reread it. I just finished it and I want to reread it because it is that good. There's so many good quotes. The writing is so beautiful. It's so fun. There were times when I was literally like laughing out loud, and then there were times when I wanted to cry. Like, the whirlwind of emotions that Jessa Hastings takes you through, I just can't even describe it. Like, I'm obsessed with this series. I'm just starting Daisy Hates too, and then I will be posting my Magnolia Parks reading vlogs. Definitely check that out to get more of like my thoughts, my opinions, my reactions, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think I've ever loved a series or a group of people as much as I love the Magnolia Parks world. So definitely, if you have not read this series, please read it. Like, it's so good. So that is all for today's wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited about my November reads. If you haven't checked out my November TBR, definitely check it out because I have so many fun books that I want to read this month. So I am super excited. I have some fun videos planned this month. Make sure you subscribe, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.